Welcome back to another episode of The Last Game Hunter. I am Paul, your host, and today we are talking about power supplies. How do you go about buying a power supply for today's computer needs? Whether it would be just a simple motherboard with a built-in graphics, or you're putting in a monster card, or so on. How do you pick? And who tells you what to pick? And why do you pick it? So today we're going to simplify, not get totally into detail, because that just gets lost. So I'm just going to simplify how you should buy a power supply and what you should be looking for and what to watch out for. All right, we're back. How do you go about buying the right power supply? How do you know? You're a first-time builder, or you're an in-between builder. You've been doing it once or twice, but pretty novice, and your thought of, oh, I better get a 1,000-watt power supply, is just intense, and you're thinking you have to spend $300 on a power supply instead of $100 or $70 or $80 on a power supply. So how do you do it? Well, I'll tell you how not to do it first. One, if you're going on a shelf and you're picking up power supplies like this, 400 watt or 500 watt, single rail right on the box, who cares? Is that something to brag about? I didn't know it was something to brag about. So it tells me I do have a single rail of 25 amps. Okay. Except for it doesn't come with anything to plug into video cards. So, okay. Bottom line is, CoolMax do make good power supplies. This isn't it. So when you look at the back of a box and it doesn't really give you much to go by, that's a ding, ding, ding. Walk away from that. Just walk away from it. Because I guarantee you, if CoolMax had a $200 power supply on the shelf, it is going to have all the information on the box. The 500 watt below it versus the 400 watt are probably the same power supply with a different sticker. You don't believe me? Back in the day when I had my computer stores, they even offered or told me, what sticker do you want at 500, 550, 450, 400? I was like, what? It's a thing. So people did that in the past. They'd have a sticker put on from the supplier. They'd come in a crate or a box with 20 power supplies in it. I think it was 10 per box, 5 and 5. And they would have the sticker that you chose, and then they vacuum seal it again. That's how those are packed. There's no packing in the box. If I pick that power supply up, this is sealed. You can see the reflection. This is sealed. That is how it's packed. A little bit more weight to it, but that's how it's packed. Now, that's number 2, weight. Weight is starting to be a not issue. And the reason why I say that is, as things are getting newer, things are changing. So for example, Be Quiet Platinum. We'll just take that for an example. Well, Platinum's a pretty high up there power supply. So the efficiency is better, therefore it's getting lighter. So this is still has weight to it, but not the weight that we would expect picking up a 850 watt Platinum power supply. It's the components that are put into it to make it Platinum, and those components are higher end, therefore also getting lighter. And that's something we're going to see moving forward. So before, when I used to buy a power supply, back in the day, I would pick them up. I would go, oh, that's not very heavy. And that was a thing. That was truly a thing. And it's because the technology wasn't quite there, and transformers and transformer winds and everything were done differently. And the better or heavier the transformer was in your old power supplies, you got a good power supply. Most times. Now, today, like I said, moving forward with platinum, gold, bronze, this, that, whatever, they're getting lighter. Even though there's still weight to them, they're getting lighter. So, what does that mean for you moving forward? What is the difference between 80 plus and then bronze, gold, and blah, blah, blah? Well, the problem is 80 plus is just the standard. When it comes to bronze, gold, silver, platinum, titanium, and so on, that's the efficiency of the power supply. So the better the power supply, the less draw from your power outlet it's going to need to create that power. That's the higher end components. As in a bronze, gold, or whatever below a platinum, let's say, they would need to draw more power and to create that efficiency still that they're rated for. Now, does that make them better power supplies? Is a platinum a better power supply? Well, platinum's a better power supply, I guess, if you're an environmentalist and you don't want to use, you're doing your part in your computer world to keep your power consumption down, but that doesn't mean that the power supply is better. And this is something I had to learn. This is why I'm not going to get into the tech part of it, for the simple reason that, one, I am not a professional, and I don't pretend to be. I'm here to try and educate the best I can with tech levels that everybody can understand. If you want to go out and buy a power supply today, just listen. It's simple that you can save money on your power bill. Okay, but it's probably $2. You see what I'm saying? Or 2 cents difference between this one per watt or so on. So it's not like you're saving big money. In your mind, environmentally, you're doing yourself a favor or the world a favor. And that is why the bronze and so on and whatever efficiencies were rated. And that is what they are. Now, another thing when people are going out and buying power supplies. So for example, if you were going out and you were buying, let's say, a lower end 600 watt Be Quiet power supply, Pure Power 11. So here it has two 12-volt rail ratings. So you have a 32 amp and a 28 amp. So both of them are above 18 amp, which is the mandatory thing now for anything like this to be running. So that's very important. But what that means for you now is you don't have to worry about, at 576 watts, as long as this power supply is in its efficiency, which it will, unless it's overheating, which would have to be very weird, you're getting 576 watts delivered to your 12-volt rails. And this is an 80 gold. Now, if they had an 80 bronze of this version, you could still buy it. You probably won't even find a whole lot of difference between the rail values and everything else, because they're almost the same power supply, but they're not. So a little bit higher end components went into this one than their bronze friend. I won't say competitor, could be the same two power supplies, just something different inside that makes this more efficient than the bronze. Okay, so now we move on. Let's do something crazy here. So now we're going to move on here. I just grabbed the pen so I can cut this open real quick. And I want to talk about modular, semi-modular, and just modular, semi-modular, and not modular. What is the reasoning behind it? Why is one better than the other? Is it? And so on. And the answer, of course, is that is entirely up to you. So it comes down to a non-modular power supply is filled with all these cables. So every cable that you could possibly need or use is on there. So that means you have to hide extra wires if you're not using it. That doesn't make it a bad power supply. It doesn't make it any worse of a product than its competitor. So if this one fell in line with Roswell or Be Quiet as far as power ratings and this, that, and levels of technology inside, then this would mean no difference than these. So non-modular, just harder to take care of because you have to get rid of all these lines. Semi-modular and fully modular. So we have a Roswell 1000 watt power supply here. I've been testing one for a little while. I don't know if I'm going to do a review on it or anything, because I don't even know how you would review a power supply unless you had the ins and out know-how and the equipment to rate them. I rate them by, does it work? Does it handle high stress loads when I'm putting it against, like with a 6900 and a bunch of other things? That's how I look at things. And if it works and doesn't get hot and it's not overworking, then I trust it, pretty much. So the difference between modular and semi-modular is you have these two wires. These two wires right here. That sucks. No, it doesn't. Those are the same two wires you need in every single computer build. Your 24-pin motherboard and your two 8-pin or 4 or 8-pin and 4, 8 plus 4, 8 plus 8, or just 8. These hide behind a board. You need these two cables. So you're plugging those two cables in to a full modular power supply. So if you're going to argue the difference between these two, I'd have a hard time with that. In fact, I was talking to my buddy Jeff about that not that long ago, and we both concluded it's one less connection. This is soldered straight to the board, or it's plugged directly into the board, however it's done. Whereas this is soldered to the board or plugged into the board, then there's another connection goes out. That doesn't make it any worse, but if I had to make a judgment, I would say that direct solder to the board would be better than a modular power supply. Now, that doesn't affect it in any way from what we've seen so far. That is just a theory. Being in an electronic background, that's what I would think. So that is just a thought. You can comment below if you think the same thing, but these two cables are always needed. So in the grand scheme of things, if it's a little cheaper to get a or a semi-modular over a full modular, how do you pick your power supply? Is it confusing? Not so confusing. You need to power up your motherboard, CPU, and anything that's on this motherboard. Your GPU choices. If it's a beast like this, like a Vega 64 or a 6900 XT or a 3090 from NVIDIA, those play factors. But I have to have light, Mom. So then you grab a 5-pack of fans. Another factor. Wasn't bright enough, Mom. So then you grab 10 fans and you put it in your computer and it lights your whole entire living room. The bottom line, guys, the more you add, you have to look at what you're doing. So now you have hard drives or SSDs or M.2s, which don't really draw a lot. A hard drive would draw a lot more than a solid state. Then you have all these fans. Well, all the fans combined are going to draw something. The lights are going to draw something. Whatever your case may have in it for lighting or mods may draw something. A liquid cooler is going to draw some more as well. So it all really boils down to this. If you're not sure, there's no such thing as going too big except for kinda. Don't go out and buy a $1,500 whatever because it's the biggest, baddest power supply on the market and you think you're going to use it one day. Would I do that? So what I would suggest, 850 gold, 850 bronze, pretty much sums it up. If you get an 850 bronze, 850 gold, you're in a good spot. If you're going to run a 6900 XT, a 6800 XT, or a 3090 or 3080, we've been through this, and that was a video I was going to make. I had a lot of trouble, and that's why my gaming machine is looking like a test bench over there, is because it's been stripped down to just bare nothing, and I couldn't figure out why my card was shutting down. Now, on another note, Jeff had a GameMax power supply, and this is where it might fall into something, because we talked about single rail and multi-rail and whatever, and it doesn't actually matter. If it's single rail or multi-rail, it's just a safety circuit kind of built in. For example, my 850 Platinum here has two 21 amp rails and two 35 amp rails. It's got four 12 volt rails. Realistically, and that's at 800 and I think it was 830 or something watts. That is so, and I thought it wasn't big enough. Oh, what it comes down to, did the 850 survive? Mine did. Jeff's didn't. On heavy loads, this is where I'm talking about build quality. GameMax might be somewhat a little known company that has been around for a little while now. Maybe they've been around for a lot longer than I think. I never heard of them until he bought the power supply. Now, under warranty, it was great. They gave him a full refund, told him to throw it out. So that was really cool. So their customer service was good, but the draw from his 6900 XT on startup or whatever had happened went over to 300 watt mark, or whatever happened, could have went to 390 and was drawing such pull from the power supply. The power supply was working harder with less or inferior components, and now that power supply can't run any high-end video cards, just low-end. So it still functions, but it's hurt. So that tells me power supplies matter, and that's where I go back to brand name. So if you go brand name, whether it be Cooler Master, Corsair, Thermaltake, Be Quiet, Roswell, I wouldn't put an ASA power supply. I don't even know if they go over 650 right now. I wouldn't put them in something with such a high-end video card. Okay, they're a decent power supply. I have no problem with them. I don't dislike them at all. I don't know what they would be like in a higher end environment, but that's something to look at. These are bronze certified, and I think that's all they do at this point. So that is the thing. Stay away from brands that are, if you're making high end, then you're spending money on a power supply. The biggest mistake people make, well, if I spend a little bit more on my video card, I will have a better video card. Gonna have to spend a lot less on my power supply. Hope it works. That's what I'm getting at. Don't look at the little guy when it comes to a high-end computer. Please purchase what you're working on. If you're willing to put $1,500 or $1,000 into a video card, drop $300 or $200 on a decent power supply, please. If you're looking to build a budget business machine, I would still look at the ASA power supply as the entry level, in my opinion. So 550, I believe, is out there, and the 650 is out there, and you can even get it with lights. Guys, I hope this helped somebody out somewhere. Please just remember, when you're buying and putting together a PC, especially if you're thinking that in your mind you're building a budget, mid, or gaming rig, think about that when you're buying your power supply. Your power supply is your most important piece of the computer. Nothing else is. Everything else is just bling bling and performance. If your power supply goes, your gear can go too. That's not cool. Seen it owning computer stores in the past. I know what it's like. Power supply could take out a lot of stuff and do a lot of damage because they kept putting cheap power supplies in. And back then, I was no better. I was putting cheap power supplies in builds and wondering why in 6 months I was replacing them. And guys, if you want to help the channel, please check out the link below. It is an Amazon store that I have created as such. It's just a recommendation store. The channel does get commission off product that sells from it, but it is stuff that I have reviewed. So it's stuff that I've used, tested, and continue to use or buy. So if you think that I'm your guy, the go-to guy, by all means, check out the link below, see what you're looking for, and you know that at least I've done something with it. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask. Till next time, game over.